What if the deepest power of empathy is not to feel another's pain, but to rewire your own consciousness into wholeness? Stay with that thought for a moment. Let it sink in, like a whisper carried by the wind, because for so many of us, empathy has been confused with absorption. We take in the grief of others, the heaviness of the world, and we carry it as if it were our own. We end up drained, exhausted, sometimes even resentful without knowing why. Have you felt this before? The weight of someone else's sorrow lingering in your chest long after they've left the room? I want to begin in this space where pain and confusion live, because this is where transformation begins. Empathy, as most of us have been taught, feels like a burden. It feels like a heavy coat we never asked to wear. And yet, what if that understanding's incomplete? What if true empathy was never about drowning in another's suffering, but about becoming a mirror of coherence? Imagine, instead of being pulled into another's storm, your presence quietly radiates calm. Instead of collapsing under their sorrow, your nervous system offers them a model of balance. This is not fantasy, this is science. Neuroscience tells us that mirror neurons don't only replicate emotions, they can also be trained to project resilience. Your brain is not a passive receiver of suffering, it is a transmitter of coherence. So when we speak of empathy in this journey, we are not speaking of pity, nor of self-sacrifice. We are speaking of a quantum fact, a spiritual technology hidden inside your biology that can expand your consciousness and shift your frequency. Think of sunlight passing through a magnifying. If unfocused, it disperses and burns everything in its path. But when directed with intention, it ignites transformation. Empathy is like, it doesn't burn you when you hold it in alignment. It becomes the fire that transforms both you and the one before you. I know some of you are listening right now with heavy hearts. Perhaps you've been living with grief that never seems to dissolve. Perhaps you've carried the silent weight of separation, illness, or disappointment for years. Perhaps you've tried to manifest change only to feel blocked, stuck in cycles you don't understand. And maybe, deep inside, you've begun to wonder, the universe has gone silent. I want you to know you are not alone in this pain. And more than that, you are not broke. Empathy, understood in its quantum form, is the very bridge that can lead you back to your center. As we move together through this journey, I invite you to feel, not just listen, not just analyze, but truly feel. Notice what happens in your body as we speak of these truths. Notice your breath, the rhythm of your heart, the sensations that rise and fall. Because the hidden power of empathy is not an idea to be studied, it is a frequency to be experienced. And as we open this path, step by step, you will discover that empathy is not the weight you thought it was. It is the key to transforming your consciousness, the key to awakening the dormant intelligence within you, the key to living not in exhaustion, but in coherence. So let us begin. Not by trying to escape the pain, but by honoring, not by rushing to solution, but by sitting quietly with what is true. This is the doorway. This is the invitation. This is the hidden power of quantum empathy waiting to reveal itself in you. The invisible error, confusing empathy with emotional absorption. There is a silent mistake that has shaped the way many of us live with empathy. It is the belief that to be empathetic means to carry another's suffering inside our own body. We feel the weight of their grief, the echoes of their fears, the tremors of their losses, and we take it all in as if it belonged to us. Slowly, our inner space becomes crowded, heavy, and suffocating. We lose energy, we feel drained, and in moments, we may even notice a quiet resentment form, not because we don't care, but because we have been carrying more than we were ever meant to carry. This confusion arises from a distorted image of empathy. Empathy is not about becoming a container for another's pain. It is not about drowning with them in their sorrow. True empathy is resonance, not absorption. It is coherence, not collapse. It is the capacity to remain in your center while gently allowing another to feel seen in there. Neuroscience has shown us that mirror neurons, the very circuits that reflect another's emotions, are not limited to copying suffering. They can also model resilience, calm, and strength. Your brain does not need to echo despair. It can transmit coherence. Consider this subtle shift. When you meet someone in pain, you do not have to descend into their suffering to validate. You can honor their experience while radiating balance. You can remain the steady rhythm that helps their nervous system remember what peace feels like. Imagine it as two instruments tuning together. One is out of tune, vibrating in chaos, and the other remains steady. Slowly, through resonance, the discordant instrument finds its harmony again. Empathy, when practiced consciously, works like this. It does not weaken, it strengthens the field between you and the other, creating creating a shared coherence where healing can occur. There is a metaphor that speaks to this with clarity. Think of sunlight passing through a magnifying glass. When unfocused, it scatters, burning without purpose, and sometimes causing destruction. But when aligned and intentional, the same light becomes a point of ignition, capable of transformation, capable of sparking fire. Empathy is no different. Unfocused empathy burns you out. Conscious empathy ignites transformation. Many of you may recognize this invisible error in your own lives. Perhaps you have sat with a friend in grief and found yourself carrying that grief long after you left. Perhaps you have felt the exhaustion of walking into a room full of heavy emotion, only to feel them sink into your body as if they were your own. Perhaps, over time, this has left you weary, even questioning whether your sensitivity is a blessing or a curse. But the truth is this: your sensitivity was never the problem. What drains you is not empathy itself, but empathy misunderstood. What exhausts you is not connection, but the lack of coherence within connection. True empathy does not ask you to bleed for others. It asks you to radiate presence. It is not a collapse into pain, but a transmission of balance. This is the turning point where everything begins to change. To realize that empathy is not weakness. To realize that empathy is not about losing yourself in another's storm. To realize that empathy, when aligned, becomes the very strength that allows you to walk into any room, any conversation, any relation, and remain whole. So the invitation in this moment is simple. Notice how you have been practicing empathy. Notice where it has left you tired, depleted, or resentful. And then ask yourself, what would it feel like to shift from absorption to resonance? What would it feel like to become the magnifying glass that ignites transformation instead of the sponge that soaks up sorrow? This is not imagination. This is the very biology of your nervous system waiting to be retrained. The invisible error ends here with awareness. And from this awareness, a new way of living begins. A way in which empathy no longer drains but nourishes. A way in which sensitivity no longer breaks you but expands. A way in which you become not the echo of another's pain, but the presence that awakens their possibility. Why most fail to access the quantum power of empathy. There is a reason why so many who seek transformation, who study manifestation, and who dedicate themselves to spiritual practice still feel blocked. They pray, they visualize, they affirm, and yet the reality they desire seems far away, as if life has sealed a door before them. Beneath this frustration lies an error that often goes unnoticed: the absence of empathy in the act of creating. Most attempts at manifestation are built on ego-centered intention. They revolve around my dream, my abundance, my success, my healing. They become narrow, contracted, self-contained, and in this contraction, the deeper frequency of empathy is excluded. When manifestation is taught only as a personal quest, it becomes distorted. It places the individual at the center of the universe, as if everything must bend to their will. But the truth is that consciousness does not operate in isolation. Life is not moved by the force of one single ego demanding change. Life responds to resonance. Life responds to coherence. Life responds when the individual aligns not only with their own desire, but with the field of collective possibility. Empathy is the missing thread that weaves your intention into the fabric of the universe. Bruce Lipton reminds us that beliefs are contagious. Your environment, your relationships, and even the emotions you resonate with shape your biology at the cellular level. Your nervous system is not just influenced by your inner thoughts, it is programmed by the frequencies of those around you. Every encounter, every exchange, every act of empathy recalibrates your biology, which means manifestation is never only about what you want, it is also about what you feel through others. The question is not only, what do I want to attract, but also, what energy am I allowing myself to synchronize? This is where the hidden power of empathy emerges. To manifest is not merely to imagine abundance for yourself, but to step into the resonance of abundance wherever it already exists. To see another's joy and allow it to awaken joy in you. To feel another's peace and let it teach your body what peace truly is. To witness gratitude in someone else and mirror it within your own heart. Empathy becomes the bridge by which you enter the very states of being you long for, not in isolation, but in communion. Think of a flame. When a flame is shared, it does not diminish, it multiplies. One candle lights another, and then another, and instead of depletion, there is an expansion of light. This is the mathematics of empathy. When you enter into resonance with another's elevated state, you do not lose yourself. You grow bright. Energy multiplies through connection. Consciousness expands through shared frequency. And yet, this is why so many fail. They try to manifest in solitude, focusing only on themselves, guarding their energy, forgetting that the very fabric of life is relation. They repeat affirmations with closed hearts. They meditate without resonance. They try to create abundance without ever feeling the vibration of abundance in another. And so they remain blocked, wondering why their efforts fall flat, unaware that empathy was always the missing current. Pause for a moment and reflect. How often have you approached manifestation as an isolated act? How often have you believed it was only about you and your desire, without noticing the way empathy could amplify? When you begin to empathize with joy, even if it is not yet yours, your nervous system learns joy. When you empathize with peace, your cells learn coherence. When you empathize with gratitude, your heart becomes magnetic to abundance. This is the doorway that most never walk through. The realization that empathy is not weakness, not sacrifice, not distraction, but the very multiplier of manifestation. To access the quantum power of empathy is to step beyond the ego's narrow circle and into the wider rhythm of life. It is to remember that consciousness is a shared field and that creation expands not through isolation, but through resonance, the silent factor that sabotages quantum empathy. Even when the heart longs to connect, even when the mind believes in the beauty of empathy, something often interferes quiet, like a shadow beneath the surface. That shadow is stress. It is the silent saboteur that keeps empathy from unfolding into its quantum power. Many people try to open themselves to others, but hidden beneath their gestures of care is a nervous system locked in survival. Anxiety, unconscious judgment, and inner tension create barriers that no intention can cross. The heart cannot radiate coherence when the body is still trapped in defense. Neuroscience reveals why this happens. When stress becomes chronic, the body is flooded with cortisol. This chemical storm shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the very part of the brain responsible for compassion, creativity, and higher perspective. Instead of spaciousness, the mind narrows. Instead of openness, the body contracts. In this state, empathy is impossible. One cannot resonate with another when one is still fighting to survive. It is like trying to hear a symphony while a radio blares static over every note. The music is still playing, but the interference blocks its melody. This is why so many people feel that their sensitivity disappears in moments of stress. A child's cry, a partner's frustration, a stranger's anger. These encounters do not awaken empathy when the body is already in survival. Instead, they trigger defense, withdrawal, or judgment. It is not that the person has no compassion, but that the door to empathy has been biologically shut by fear. And in this closing, the possibility of resonance is lost. Yet there is a truth hidden within this pattern. The nervous system, though conditioned by stress, can be gently retrained. A single breath, deeply taken with intention, begins to shift the electromagnetic field of the heart. A pause before entering a conversation where one silently affirms, "I choose coherence over defense," creates space where empathy can flow again. It does not erase the challenge or the conflict, but it tunes the instrument back into harmony. Like a musician adjusting the strings before playing, we too can tune our inner frequency. Think of empathy not as a force to be applied, but as a signal to be received. When static fills the channel, nothing clear can pass through. But when tuning occurs, the hidden song reappears. The heart begins to resonate again. The body relaxes. The field expands. And in that expansion, the presence of another can be felt without fear. Perhaps you recognize yourself in this silent factor. Perhaps you've wondered why, in some moments, you feel deeply compassionate, and in others you feel numb, reactive, or distant. It is not a flaw in your character. It is the mark of a nervous system shifting between coherence and survival. It is the natural consequence of stress. And knowing this truth is the first step toward transformation, because empathy cannot be forced. It cannot be demanded. It emerges only when the body is tuned, when the heart is coherent, when the mind is no longer defending against life. And once this state is restored, empathy flows effortlessly, no longer sabotaged, no longer silenced. It becomes not something you strive, but something you are. Empathy as a bridge between quantum physics and spiritual consciousness. There is a subtle loneliness that often follows the spiritual path. You meditate, you journal, you repeat affirmations, you light candles and whisper prayer. Yet when you step into relationships, old wounds rise again. The very people you love most seem to awaken your deepest insecurity. And so a silent contradiction appears. Inner practices may bring moments of peace, but in connection with others, the turbulence returns. This gap between the inner world and the outer world leaves many feeling isolated, as if their personal transformation is incomplete. Science begins to reveal why. Bruce Lipton's work in quantum biology shows us that every cell in the body is an antenna, responding not only to chemistry, but to frequency. Greg Braden reminds us that the electromagnetic field of the heart is measurable, extending far beyond the body, influencing and being influenced by the fields of others. This means that your inner work does not end with you. The state of your heart is continuously resonant, continuously exchanging, continuously shaping, and being shaped by the people around you. Transformation that remains locked within meditation or silence is partial. To become whole, it must extend through the bridge of empathy into relation. This is the hidden truth. Empathy is the social nervous system of consciousness. It is the mechanism by which inner transformation meets the outer world. Without it, meditation becomes an island. Affirmations become a private echo, and personal growth remains incomplete. But with it, every relationship becomes an extension of your practice. Every conversation becomes a moment of resonance. Every meeting becomes an opportunity for coherence to expand beyond. Think of empathy not as an idea, but as a field. When you meet another human being, your heart and their heart are already communicating in silence. Your frequencies are already dancing, already synchronizing, already searching for coherence. To empathize consciously is not only to say, I understand, but to allow your body to feel what coherence with that person would feel like. To let your nervous system extend itself as a bridge, carrying balance across the invisible space between you. There is a metaphor that captures this. Empathy as a quantum bridge. Imagine a river between two states of being. On one side, isolation, fear, and disconnection. On the other, wholeness, peace, and presence. Each time you step into empathy, you cross that bridge, not alone, but together. And as you cross, the state of consciousness itself shifts. Not just yours, not just theirs, but the shared field you both inhabit. This is why personal transformation without empathy often feels unfinished, because the final step of awakening is not found in solitude, but in resonance. It is when your coherence becomes a signal that others can feel, when your inner work becomes a presence that touches lives, when your sensitivity becomes not only personal but collective. This is the point where spirituality and quantum physics meet, in the recognition that energy does not stop at the edge of your skin. It continues, it extends, it connects. Perhaps this explains why so many who have practiced in silence still feel lonely. The heart longs not only for personal coherence, but for shared coherence. It longs not only to be healed, but to resonate with others in healing. And when this resonance is allowed, a deeper truth awakens. We are not isolated seekers, but bridges. We are not solitary beings, but participants in a vast, interconnected field of consciousness. Empathy is that bridge. Each step upon it takes you further from isolation and closer to unity. Each act of resonance brings your practice out of silence and into light. And as this unfolds, you begin to see that empathy is not only a personal virtue, it is the very architecture by which consciousness evolved. The three-step quantum empathy activation. There comes a point when knowledge must become experience, when concepts must turn into sensation. Empathy cannot remain only an idea. It must be felt in the body, breathed into the heart, and lived through presence. The path of quantum empathy offers a simple yet profound sequence, a way of aligning mind, heart, and energy into coherence. It is not complicated. It does not demand hours of effort. It is a gentle tuning, a remembering of what your biology already knows how to do. The first step is to center. 3 breaths are enough, not shallow, distracted breaths, but slow, conscious ones. With each inhale, the heart and mind begin to align. With each exhale, the body lets go of defense. In these 3 breaths, the nervous system is reminded that it is safe, that coherence is possible. Joe Dispenza has shown that such moments of heart coherence create measurable changes in the electromagnetic field of the body. But beyond science, you can feel it. The calm, the presence, the opening. The second step is to mirror. Bring to mind someone whose joy, peace, or gratitude you have witnessed in its most authentic form. It may be a child laughing, a friend speaking with sincerity, or even a stranger whose face glowed with quiet contentment. Instead of observing from the outside, allow yourself to feel that state within your own body. Let their joy echo in your chest, their peace soften your breath, their gratitude expand your heart. This is empathy as resonance. In that moment, your neurons mirror not suffering, but coherence. You borrow their frequency, and in borrowing, you awaken it within yourself. The third step is to expand. With the feeling now alive in your body, imagine it radiating out, not as a fantasy, but as a frequency, as if your entire being is a transmitter, silently broadcasting this state into the field around you. Gratitude flows from you. Peace extends beyond your skin. Joy ripples outward like a subtle wave, invisible yet deeply real. In this expansion, empathy transcends the personal. It becomes collective, a field in which others can unconsciously tune themselves back to coherence. The result of this three-step activation is not dramatic fireworks. It is subtler, deeper, a natural shift in emotional base, a quiet expansion of presence, a sense that your body is no longer heavy with defense, but light with resonance. Science would say the electromagnetic field of the heart has expanded. Spirit would say you have remembered your true frequency. Both are true. The metaphor is simple, yet profound. Empathy, when awakened, is like tuning into a hidden radio station. The music was always playing, but interference kept you from hearing. Once you tune the dial, through breath, mirroring, and expansion, the song returns. It is the song of consciousness itself, timeless, eternal, vibrating in every living being. And when you hear it, you know that you were never disconnected, never alone, never without resonance. This activation is not a ritual to be performed occasionally. It is a way of living, a way of breathing, feeling, and radiating in daily life. And the more it is remembered, the more natural it becomes, until empathy is no longer something you activate, but something you are. Empathy as the quantum key to conscious evolution. There is a hidden truth that reveals itself only when we step beyond the surface of empathy and enter its quantum depth. Empathy is not simply kind, not merely a social virtue, not a gesture of politeness in a fragmented world. Empathy is a biological mechanism, a spiritual force, and a quantum principle all at once. It is the frequency through which consciousness evolves. It does not simply improve relationships, it rewires perception itself. Bruce Lipton has shown us that environment and belief are the architects of biology. The signals that reach our cell, whether they come from within us or from the field of those around us, shape the expression of life at its most fundamental level. Empathy alters both of these forces at once. When we resonate with another in coherence, we are not only shifting our own biology, but we are also reshaping the environment that their cells respond to. One field of coherence touches another. One heart in resonance becomes the silent invitation for men. In this way, empathy is not a personal act. It is an ecological act of consciousness, healing both the individual and the field in which they live. Joe Dispenza adds another layer. When the heart enters coherence, the electromagnetic field around the body expands. This field does not remain neutral. It becomes magnetic to elevated possibilities. In the language of spirituality, it means your presence begins to attract harmony, abundance, and synchronicity. In the language of science, it means that your nervous system, aligned with gratitude and compassion, organizes energy into order. And when empathy is woven into this coherence, your field no longer serves only yourself. It becomes a shared current, carrying elevated states into the collective. Empathy, then, is not just a bridge. It is also the currency of exchange in the evolution of consciousness. Every act of true empathy, every moment you choose resonance instead of absorption, coherence instead of defense, enriches both you and the other. It is not a gift that depletes, but a transaction that multiplies. Like light reflected between mirrors, it expands endlessly, creating more than either could hold alone. Empathy is not lost, it is exponential growth. Perhaps this is why deep inside, the human spirit longs so strongly for connection, because connection is not a luxury. It is the very mechanism by which consciousness awakens. Alone, you may rise partway, but together, resonance carries you further. Alone, you may touch silence, but together, empathy reveals a harmony larger than the self. This is the path of conscious evolution, not separation, not survival, but coherence. The reflection at the end of this journey is simple yet transformative. The world does not change because we force it from the outside. It changes because the frequency with which we perceive it has shifted. And empathy is the key to that shift. When you feel the world not as a threat, but as a resonance, not as a burden, but as a field of coherence. Your consciousness evolves. And as your consciousness evolves, so does the field of humanity itself. So let this truth settle deeply within you. You are not powerless. You are not isolated. You are not left behind by life. Within you exists the quantum key, the capacity to feel, to resonate, to extend coherence into every space you inhabit. Empathy is not weakness. It is your greatest strength. Empathy is not sacrifice. It is evolution. And so, in this very moment, let the words become a quiet affirmation that you carry in your breath. I choose coherence. I radiate empathy. I am a bridge of transformation. Repeat it until it feels alive in your body, because every time you affirm, every time you live, you are not only transforming yourself, you are reshaping the very field of consciousness we all share. This is the invitation of quantum empathy. This is the hidden power that awakens when the heart chooses resonance. And this is how consciousness evolves. Not tomorrow, not in some distant age, but here, now, through you, empathy as the quantum key to conscious evolution. As this journey draws to its close, let us return to the beginning, to the silent question that has guided every step. What if empathy was never about suffering, but about transformation? The path we have walked together reveals that empathy is not an emotional burden, nor a fragile sensitivity that leaves you exposed. It is a hidden mechanism of consciousness, a bridge between the biological and the spiritual, the personal and the collective, the individual and the universe. Bruce Lipton showed us that beliefs and environment shape biology. When empathy shifts both at once, it changes not only the inner state, but the field in which we live. Joe Dispenza reminded us that heart coherence expands the electromagnetic field, turning it magnetic to elevated states of being. And when empathy enters this coherence, your presence ceases to be limited to yourself. It becomes a radiant frequency, silently guiding others into balance. These insights are not abstract. They are proof that empathy is both spiritual and scientific, mystical and measurable, transcendent and deeply practical. Think again of the metaphors that have carried: the sunlight that ignites transformation when focused, the flame that multiplies instead of diminishing when shared, the radio that tunes to the hidden music of consciousness. Once the static is clear, each of these speaks of a truth that words alone cannot capture. Empathy is not weakness. It is the fire, the multiplication, the music. It is not just the bridge. It is the very currency of exchange between souls, the frequency by which we evolve together. Perhaps you recognize yourself in this story. Perhaps you have carried pain that was not yours, felt the exhaustion of absorbing the sorrow of others, or wondered why your manifestations seemed blocked. Perhaps you have been lonely in your practice, longing for connection that did not come. If so, know this: empathy is the key that unlocks each of these doors. It transforms pain into resonance, loneliness into communion, and blocked energy into flow. And it does so not by taking more from you, but by awakening more within you. The invitation is not to escape love, but to meet it with coherence. Not to avoid pain, but to allow empathy to transmute it into presence. Not to chase abundance, but to feel it through the resonance of others until your body remembers what it means to live in alignment. Every moment becomes an opportunity, every encounter a bridge, every breath a frequency. So let us seal this journey with words that are not merely spoken, but live. I choose coherence. I radiate. I am a bridge of transformation. Whisper it if you wish, or let it echo silently in your heart. These words are not an affirmation to be repeated mechanically, but a declaration of your essence. They are the remembrance of who you already are beneath the noise of fear and the weight of survival. Transformation does not begin by forcing the world outside to change. It begins by shifting the frequency with which you feel the world within and around you. And when you do, the field responds. The universe listens. Consciousness evolves. Empathy is the hidden power. Empathy is the key. And now, you carry it within you, not as a concept, but as a living truth. Closing reflection. As we arrive at the final moments of this journey, let the silence between words carry as much weight as the words themselves. We have walked through pain, through science, through spirit, and through the hidden layers of empathy. And now, there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to force. There is only the gentle presence of truth settling into your heart, like light upon still water. Empathy, as we have seen, is not a fragile gift to be guarded. It is a frequency of transformation, a bridge between inner and outer, self and other, biology and divinity. It is both a practice and a state of being, both both a choice and a natural rhythm. It has the power to rewire the brain, to reorganize the field of the heart, and to awaken the shared consciousness that unites us all. Perhaps as you listen now, you feel a quiet shift inside you, a softening where there was tension, a spaciousness where there was contraction, a recognition that you are not alone, not disconnected, not abandoned in your search. You are part of a greater coherence, part of a vast field where every breath, every presence, every act of empathy ripples outward into infinity. And so, the question that remains is not, will the world change for me? But rather, what frequency am I offering to the world in this moment? For in that frequency lies the seed of transformation. When you offer coherence, you invite coherence. When you radiate empathy, you awaken empathy. When you choose resonance, the universe mirrors it back in ways you could not have imagined. Carry this truth with as you return to the ordinary rhythm of your day. In the sound of a voice, in the presence of a stranger, in the silence of your own breath, remember, empathy is always there, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be radiant, waiting to evolve consciousness through you. And now, as a final seal upon this path, let the words echo once more, not as repetition, but as remembrance. I choose coherence. I radiate empathy. I am a bridge of transformation. Breathe them in, breathe them out. Let them live in you beyond this moment. The hidden power of quantum empathy is no longer hidden. It is alive in your awareness, alive in your body, alive in your field. And from this place, transformation is not a distant hope. It is already unfolded. This is where we end for now, not with closure, but with continuation, not with finality, but with a beginning, for empathy is not a destination. It is a path you walk each day, step by step, resonance by resonance, frequency by frequency. And as you walk it, consciousness itself rises with you.